What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I'm Jason, Melton Tackle. We're going to talk about halibut fishing today. We've been getting a lot of questions in the store. Obviously, this year has been a really great year for halibut for tons of us here. You know, just either discovering that fish and targeting it, or guys that's been their favorite fish for a long time. But nevertheless, we get a lot of questions on like how we choose to target fish. We usually use like 25 to 40 pound as far as like the fluoro goes. Halibut don't really care that much, and line diameter. It's not like you're fly lining for tuna. I got to pick absolute pristine bait out and have the perfect presentation, or you may not get bit. Halibut are pretty opportunistic. They don't really care as much. They're not as line shy, and they also have some nasty teeth in there. And if you get one that gets gut hooked or chokes a hook or something like that, you'll be happy you had a little bit thicker and a little denser floral if you did, which is why today we picked out the Seaguar Inshore floral. Not only is it pretty robust as in terms of abrasion resistance and stuff like that, but you get 100 yards of it for a really great price. We're going to talk about some trap hooks real quick too. The trap hooks I use most of the time are VMCs. And the reason I do that is because they're a really heavy hook, but the weight of the hook itself isn't too heavy for like sardines and like more fragile baits. Obviously, a lot of people use mackerel for halibut, but in this case, most readily available to us in most bait barges on the West Coast, we got sardine, right? So this is a really light hook, but really strong. You're not going to bend it out. Most of you probably have stood on the deck, accidentally stepped on your trap hook, and now it's flattened into nothingness. These don't really do that, which kind of was like made me scratch my head and think, man, that's a really quality hook. We generally are using like 4, 6s, and 8s. It's a smaller hook, something to stick in the belly of the fish or back if that's where you put your trap hook. It's going to be a really good one for you too. BKK is also making a really nice hook as well. It's a little bit heavier gauge of wiring, a little bit heavier, sits in your hand, but it still does the job nonetheless. And if we're out of the rest of the stuff, then obviously we all need some backup go-tos to think about for that. Again, the sizing kind of runs the same. We're using like 4s, 6s, 8s. Some of the smaller sizes, you want the bait presentation still to be really nice and not have too big of a hook down at the bottom swinging around. But the third choice we're going with today too, I got 5s and 6s here in the STXs. These are great hooks too. They're pretty heavy, pretty durable, heavy, not like weight heavy. So again, another one we picked out for that, being that it's a good quality hook and you still get it for a fairly cheap price. And then what we'll do with these is, obviously this is your trailer hook that's going on the butt. We go to our nose hook. This TGW octopus hook from Gamakatsu is probably one of my favorite hooks. It's slightly offset, obviously. Another one we're looking at too is a SSW hook. I use this a lot too. One of my buddies runs bongos, and Mike, and he likes this hook as well. Most of us too, when we do this, we're tying snell knots at the front end of this, so you get a nice little trailing line behind it that you can attach your treble hook to. We tend to go towards the 3-way swivels on a lot of this stuff. You'll see even like my rod over here. I brought a couple rods from home today. We go with like the Owner, the Spro 3-way swivels. It doesn't have to be anything super heavy. Like most of these are like 50 pound or 75 pound and less of a 3-way swivel. All right, guys, so we're gonna go over some of the rods and reels we suggest to people when they come to the store and ask, I'm going to fish halibut. I need a new setup, and I want to know what you guys would use. And this is I think everybody in here will pick probably the same setups out most of the time. You see a gamut of reels here. Anything from like the Squall Fathom in the pens to we got some of the Daiwa Saltigas and Saltis and like the 15s and the 10s, or Tranx 400s. Alexa 400, 300 up here. Even some of the like the Trinidad 14s or the Torium 14s are great reels too. What I have on the table as far as rods go, I got a Graph Tech wall banger, and this is 15 to 25. That's their wall banger 72M. It's a medium action rod, and it's got a nice softer tip to it. It's on the stiffer end of everything we would normally use, closer to like your CalStar stuff, obviously, like a 270 or something like that. The Phoenix Axis stuff I like the best, honestly. From Phoenix's line, the Axis is probably the best blank that they make out of all their stuff. I've had the least problems with breakage on these too. They've got a nice soft tip in almost every rod that you pick out from the Access line. So it's got a nice giving tip to it with a little bit of a backbone. And this one's in a medium range too, and it is like 15 to 45, I think, or 15 to 40 or somewhere in that range. I've seen a lot of guys go to like spinners too for the inshore halibut stuff, or even like a lot of that stuff that you see that's on the beach. And this is a little Stratic 5000 on a little M1 inshore rod. Um, Again, this thing's super light too. It's like 10 to 25, or the 15 to 35 would be another good one that would go with this. It's just really nice when you're casting really light weights and really light baits onto the beach, especially like if you're, you're in Catalina on the east end or something, and you're sneaking into some of the between the rocks and stuff that are at the V's or further down. Then this is a really great setup if you're throwing 1, 2, 4 ounce weight and stuff like that, and just pitching it up and working it back to you. And honestly, it's got a really giving tip to it. It's a smaller, lighter rod. It's a lot of fun to fish halibut. Like we caught like a probably 22, 25 pound halibut on this rod on our last trip out, and honestly, it was a lot of fun fighting it. Made it a fun experience. But this is a great reel in itself too. Honestly, the Stratic and the M1 are probably a great bass setup too for most of you guys. Some of the lesser experienced guys on kelp patties would have a lot of fun with this too. All right, guys, we're going to talk about gear setup real quick. Just the last little segment we'll have for you. We were just talking about, one of my setups here that I got with like some 50-pound braid on it. You can see here, and 3-way swivel technique that we've been using most often. You're just tying your braid here. You can get a good picture of this. Your braid goes to one end, obviously. You've got your main line, or your leader material that's got your hooks on it, is going to the other one. And then you got one extra one that I'd usually tie a lot lighter of leader material that I had here, but I most likely was low on some lighter leader material and just use what you got, right? So for your drop away stuff, you could use like some, 12-pound, 15-pound mono or something like that. Again, so if you do get snagged, you're just going to break the weight off. You can retie a weight real quick, but it takes you a few more minutes to retie your gear here. On your mainline side, or your leader material, what you got is a nice little snell knot there. You can see, and that snell allows you to give a little tail off the line so that you could tie your treble hook to that, or your trap hook. I didn't measure this out exactly, but you give yourself a couple inches. You want like 4 or 5 inches, maybe 6 inches or more, just so that you can give yourself enough line to tie your treble hook at the end, so you're not sitting here trying to tie a treble hook with 2 inches of line left and real tiny tag line. Just make your life a little bit easier and give yourself a little more room than you think you would need. We'll go over real quick here how to tie these snell knot. It's super simple, or the easiest method I've seen out there to tie. Take a little leader material here. And then this is obviously not the hook. It's a much bigger hook. You're not going to be going out there with a 450 Aki twist hook. Maybe if you're doing like the sport boat fishing and squid fishing for it, reverse drop a loop or dropper loop fishing for halibut, you might be using a hook like this, but probably much smaller. I'd go way, way smaller. But you're going to put your line through the eye of the hook here, right? Like I said, give yourself some ample amount of room when you're done, especially when you're first tying this knot. And there's 100 different videos probably online on how to tie a snell. This is just how I tie it. I'm going to make a little loop at the top of the line there, and then you're going to start from going underneath the shank of the hook like this, and then you're going to pass it through the loop on the top. One thing you got to do when you're tying this, obviously I'm holding on to the line here and pulling back. If you leave too much slack line, what'll happen while you're trying to tie this is I'll untie it real quick and show you. You'll come underneath and think you're all okay, but then all of a sudden it loops around the line or the shank of the hook all weird, and now you got a weird clench at the end of your knot, and it's not going to cinch down right, or could have like a weird pinch point that could cause a knot to break. So try and keep it as clean as possible while you're doing it. It helps you in the end game on your knots. Again, I'm just holding on to the slack line here, pulling it through. See how it sits on the shank of the hook, and then I'll pinch it with my thumb and finger here, and then I'll do it again while holding on to that, and then bring it up close. We'll do this like 5 times. So let's see if we can speed this up real quick for you guys. Pinch your line down, come back through, Sometimes I use my mouth just to pull it back through that loop on here. And we'll do it one more time here. I don't know if anybody's... All right. And what you'll end up with is, I don't know if you could see this part here, but you've got all your loops on the line, right? Just covering the line that you made the loop on and covering the shank of the hook. And then you'll take your slack line, pull it all the way back to the back here, and then pinch with your opposite hand and finger. And then I'll pull it all so that loop takes the slack out like you're doing right there. And I know you can't really see while I'm doing that, but that's if I let go right now. And then we keep on pulling tight, like so. Give it a little pull. Hook it to something. You can even give it a little pull test. It'll cinch it down a little further. But essentially that right there, what your knot should look like. You know, nice even lines, nothing overlapping itself or doing any weird stuff, because that's, you know, again, how you get pinch points and knot failures. Another thing you look at too, sometimes on hooks and brands of hooks you're using, and especially if you're using like cheaper hooks, I've seen like those, you know, China brands of hooks or like Blacktail or any of those weird ones have like a weird opening here where they close the shank of the hook off to make the eye. And sometimes there's a rough point on there. So you want to be careful when you're tying the knot to make sure you don't rub or chafe your line on that rough point, or your line doesn't seat in between there. This is kind of why I like Gamakatsu and owner hooks. They generally don't have that rough point on them. They are obviously more of a designer hook and a little more expensive, but you know, obviously in this industry you get what you pay for out of things. And that's a little Snell there. And obviously when we tie anything else to the back end here, it's usually just tying a standard jam knot. You know, like I'll cut this hook off real quick and we can show you guys. So, you know, just your regular jam knot going here. Let's see if I can get this like in the front there. So, got your line going through the eye of the hook. You can hook it to something if you're someone that makes life a little easier for you. You go 1, 2, 3, 4. The one thing I do when I tie any of these jam knots is I'll take my, see how it's all spread out? I'll take it and I'll push my finger up, and that just shrinks the wraps you're doing on everything and butts it up to the portion of the knot that it's gonna butt up to already. So that keeps from like line burn happening or stuff like that. And you pass it through the bottom there, and then come back up through the top. Again, you can kind of cinch everything up on top there. Hook it to something. Get a nice little knot. Ain't coming undone. Then obviously you got like a nice little San Diego jam. Make sure you cut the right side of your tag line, and you're off to the races. Again, we're not going to be usually using a bigger Aki twist hook like this, but it's got a nice big shank so you guys can get the point across. There's some other methods, obviously, we're talking about with the sport boats, like the reverse dropper loop and dropper loop fishing. A lot of the sport boats don't like you fishing a trap hook on here, but honestly, it's the best method for hookup ratio on halibut, especially since they sit there and chew and don't always just engulf a bait right off the bat. It's a really good method on like keeping them on and sticking fish. If you guys got any questions, you can come into the store. We'd be happy to sit and teach you. You know, if it's not super busy in here, or if it is super busy in here and you got the patience to kind of sit and wait a minute, and we'll sit with you until you figure this knot out completely. Wouldn't be the first time, and obviously won't be the last time we'll be teaching people knots in here, and we'd love to do it. Our Newport store and our Anaheim store, we're all over the place and adequately equipped to help you guys out with that. And then the reverse dropper loop or dropper loop knot, most of you all probably know that knot already and how to set that line up. If you don't, come on in, we'll teach you. If you guys want to see a couple other knot videos or something like that, or have some suggestions, hit us in the comments and we'll be happy to answer your questions, and maybe you'll see a video pop up next that you're looking to and hoping to see. Thanks, guys.